Good evening. Whoa, hello. That sounds completely terrible. Guess it's a good thing I hadn't hit that button yet. Sweet. Okay, give me just 1 second, folks. This is pre-roll. We'll be started here in just a second. For those of you who are listening on Spreaker, we'll get it going in just a sec. All right, so good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Rick Robinson. I am the program director here at K98Talk.com, and this is normally where you would tune in and hear me rant and rave and scream and yell on my favorite program to do, which is my solo show, which is America Off the Rails. That show will not be heard this evening. In case you've missed it, even though I've tried to put it out everywhere, along with through the talk page and my Twitter account, as well as the station's Twitter account, and pretty much everywhere else I can think of to put it, I have a lot of prep work to do. We just got confirmed for the Southern Republican Leadership Conference as a group, so K98 Talk will have myself and one other representative there. We will also have just confirmed that we will have positioning on Radio Row, which means that I have even more work to do than I thought. So for tonight, because I won't be able to do a live broadcast, there was an episode this Saturday, Finding Common Ground, that usually is hosted by myself and Bryce Robbins. If you've missed it, it was one of, at least in my opinion, one of the better episodes that we've done, because he and I actually had some pretty frank and in-depth discussions about a few things. So we're going to start off with that, and then it will run right straight into a replay of Liberty Unfiltered. His triumphant return episode here live on K98 Talk will be playing just after this show ends. And then, of course, tonight we have Paul and Angie with Real Serious Nonsense. And then, of course, rounding out the night on the live broadcast will be Daniel Stafford. I do plan on returning to live programming tomorrow, barring other crazy last-minute things that I have to take care of. But sometimes that is the downside of being both the programming director and a talk show host, as occasionally one hat has to take precedence over the other, and since we are gearing up to be in a rather large national spotlight, I definitely can't let things just kind of fall where they may. So I do plan on being back with you guys tomorrow with a live broadcast. I do hope you understand why it is that I'm not currently with you, but and instead I do hope you'll enjoy this particular show, because like I said, it was a lot of fun to do, and I think you will like it. At least I hope so.
K98 Talk is expanding its lineup for 2015. This means we are expanding our advertising base. Whether you're a startup trying to push through to the next level, or an established business trying to supplement your advertising budget, web-based advertising is a solid investment. Thanks to Talk's newest partnership with TuneIn Radio and instant access to our sister station, K98 FM, we give you worldwide access at a reasonable cost. Interested parties should email us at sales@k98fm.com. K98Talk.com, a leader in internet radio. So grab your seatbelts and take the ride of your life on K98Talk.com.
They say we offer simple answers to complex problems. Well, perhaps there is a simple answer. Not an easy answer, but simple.
It's common ground. It's common ground. It's common ground. It's common ground.
We have serious problems to solve, and we need serious people to solve them.
Republicans and Democrats.
All right, folks. Well, it is Saturday morning. It is April 18th, 2015. It is just after 9 o'clock in the morning, which means it is time for Finding Common Ground. I am joined this morning by my co-host, Mr. Bryce Robbins. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I am good. Good to be back. I'm glad to say I'll probably be more consistent now that these past couple weeks are over.
All right, so just in case anybody wasn't aware of why you have been in and out for the last couple of weeks, why don't you tell everybody what you've been up to and all that fun stuff so they have a better idea of what you've been doing.
Good. So I'm part of an organization called JSA, which is Junior States of America. And it's basically like a young people's political organization. And for the Mid-Atlantic region, not for the Mid-Atlantic, for the New Jersey region, I was running for the position of vice mayor. And I was never expected to pose an opposition, I guess, because I was kind of an off-the-floor new person. My main opponent was a girl who was actually the position below vice mayor. And I decided to play smart politics. So there was 3 people running. And me and another girl who was running decided, well, because what they do is they do runoff elections. So essentially, if you never hit 50% in your first voting, you do a runoff election. And the least person with votes gets knocked off. So I made a deal with this other girl saying, if I get knocked off or if you get knocked off, let's endorse each other so that we absorb each other's votes. So the day I got there, campaigned, all that stuff. I made a lot of videos prior to the day of the election. And the night of the election, the first votes come in. And it was 43 for the girl who's supposed to win. I believe I had 33 or 38, and the other girl had like 19%. So the girl I made the deal with got up there and said, I think everybody should vote for Bryce. And everybody was just stunned because, it was kind of a spit in the face to the other person. But anyways, all the votes start coming in for the second election. And it's 50-50, and they black out the screen to tally the votes by hand because it was just way too close. And apparently, in the closest election they've ever seen, I unfortunately lost 186 to 188. But I must say, I gave a really good concession speech. Everyone was clapping and on their feet, and now I would guess everybody knows my name, and I've been offered better positions in that organization now. So I guess that was, a serendipity. But I must say that it was an amazing challenge, I guess, and, kind of like a Rocky feeling, You weren't supposed to go that distance, but still went the distance. So, one word of encouragement to everybody who feels like they can't do something, at least try it, because going into this, I didn't feel like I could do it, but just the experience of trying, is worth it. So you never know until you try.
Well, yeah, I have to agree, and hats off to you for at least throwing your hat in the ring there, and I really do like the fact that it seems like even though it didn't work out as you had anticipated, there are still better opportunities that have arisen for you from that. And that's honestly one of the life lessons that I learned pretty short on is, the key is to try. The thing that I think has changed a lot is we used to have this mindset that the only true failure is to never have tried. Now we have so many people who are afraid to try simply because they already have it made up in their minds that they're going to fail. What they don't realize is, and what a lot of folks don't realize is until they finally take that first step and they just see how far something can take them, you learn so much more from your failures than you ever do your successes anyway. And not only that, but there are so many things that you can figure out along the way, and eventually something that you might have originally thought of as a failure winds up being a success only because of the things that you have learned along the way. So I just want to take a moment to say hats off to you for even basically throwing yourself out there like that, and I'm really glad that at least since you didn't get the position that you were trying for, it seems like it's had some positive benefits for you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, so we were actually supposed to have a guest today. I'm starting to get the feeling that he might have forgotten about us, which is fine because I actually had to reschedule a show on him last minute anyway, so I'm sure there's probably an email floating around here somewhere that I just haven't gotten to yet about probably trying to reschedule. Pardon me. Okay, so a few things that are going on that are changing around here. In case you guys have missed it, we actually have started airing a new show here weekdays on K98 Talk. It actually is the show of the guest who was supposed to be appearing with us today, Mr. Rod Eccles. You can catch that show. It's not live. It's because he's kind of on all over the place. Normally, we air shows about a day after they air live just because it gives me time to get them set. But you can hear him every day, Monday through Friday, here from 11 to, 10 to 12 Central. Sorry, I've got so many people from East Coast, West Coast, Mountain Time. Half the time I forget which time zone I should be giving out times in. But, yeah, it's 10 to 12 here Central, so 11 to 1 Eastern, and that, of course, would be 8 to 10 Pacific Time. But you can catch him here every Monday through Friday. Also, another really big announcement, K98 Talk will be attending an event that will be occurring here locally in the Oklahoma City area, the Southern Republican Leadership Conference, which is the week of, it's Thursday through Saturday, the week of May the 21st through the 23rd. Myself and the Conservative Curmudgeon will be appearing live and in person there to both cover the event, and hopefully at some point if we can figure out a way to get it done. I'm still waiting on a response back from the event coordinators to find out if there will be anywhere where we would be allowed to set up a live broadcast, because I will not be there that Saturday. Also, we may not do the usual shows that Saturday as well, because I just found out that's actually the day my son graduates. They weren't sure if they were going to do it the week before or the week of that one, because he actually gets out of school a few days before that day. I don't know why they've started doing graduations after you've technically graduated. To me, that just seems like it's kind of crazy.
Oh, I know why they do it, because they do that in my school too, because they don't want students to graduate and then never come back to school for the last couple of days. That's the reason my principal told me, at least.
Well, no, I mean, I could kind of understand that, but I'm just saying, like, when I graduated, my graduation was on a Thursday, because that was my last day of school. I graduated that Thursday night. My son's actual last day of school is that Thursday, and they don't technically do their graduation ceremony until Saturday. I'm just
God, he gets out of school early.
I'm just thinking Thursday would have worked better for me, because then I could have been at that event all 3 days. But hey, that was kind of selfish, so whatever. But yeah, I'm actually kind of looking forward to it. This is a new venture for me. I've only been doing this for a little over 2 years, and I've never actually tried to get into the serious political stuff before. So I was actually thoroughly amazed, one, that they responded so quickly, and two, that I got my credentials as quickly as I did, because we did get one other person whose credentials are being validated, which is Grouchy, but we actually had to jump through hoops to get his done. So I was actually surprised that mine just seemed to have gotten instant approval. I'm just like, that's interesting, because, yeah, anyway. But yeah, so other than the election stuff, what else has been going on in your neck of the woods? Anything interesting?
Actually, I do have a pretty funny story to tell. Yesterday, actually. So I'm in the county debate league, and my partner and I, we went 27-1. We were the first place in the county, and then we went to the championship tournament. So we actually made it into the finals, and we're in the round for first or second place. Whoever obviously loses gets second place, wins gets first place. So our plan was, the resolve was how the United States should substantially increase its exploration or development of the Earth's oceans, or ocean. So we were building nuclear-powered desalination plants on the Pacific coast for agriculture purposes in the West. Lo and behold, we did not know this, but the team that we went up against in the championship recently got into MIT and will be attending MIT for, nuclear engineering. So, I'm sure you could see how that went, but, we got a nice second place trophy. But, I mean...
you keep talking about second place and all this stuff like it's a bad thing. I mean, look at your record. I mean, how many other people can honestly say that they took their county? Not only that, but now I'm really starting to understand why you can go toe-to-toe so well. I didn't realize you were involved in a debate group.
Oh, yeah. I do debate team. No, I'm not trash talking second place. I'm just saying how it was kind of, we were so dumbfounded that this kid was literally going to MIT for nuclear engineering, so he literally took apart any aspect of our nuclear aspects to our plan, which, I mean, Honestly, I didn't think he really got down well. I just think that he worded it better, and sounded, I guess, better with it. So he kind of just stole the show at that point. And yeah, that's where I went from there.
Actually, I just found a story from your neck of the woods when I was kind of scrolling through a few things. This week starts the crackdown in Wildwood, New Jersey. No pants more than 3 inches below the waist. Fines start at $25.
Yeah. Wildwood, New Jersey. That's where all the, hooligans, I guess you could call them, go.
Well, I would assume so if they're trying to put a city ordinance together about not being able to sag your pants.
Yeah, that's probably that sounds like Wildwood, New Jersey to me.
I have to say this: have you actually heard the story as to how the saggy pants thing got started? Because I did some research into this when it first became popular, and I'm really surprised it's hung on for as long as it has, considering its origins.
I thought it had to do with somebody in prison, but tell me.
And well, you're right. It actually started. It was a prison situation. Basically, sagging your pants let people know that you were available, if you know what I mean.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Oh my god.
So the fact that this became so commonplace, it just, I don't know. To take something that went, hey, I'm a hooker, or, come get some, and turn it into a fashion statement in the outside world, something about that just seems wrong on so many levels.
Yeah, that's actually hilarious. I mean, you see all these people trying to act tough, listen to rap and, like, walking around with their pants low. That's actually hilarious.
Yeah, I just don't understand that entire concept. But yeah, I just thought that was funny that New Jersey, because, everybody thinks of New Jersey as, just this place where, because we get in trouble for that kind of stuff here, because we're like uber conservative, and everybody's like, oh, you're just trying to stifle everybody's creativity because you're like the most conservative state in the country almost. Not even a single county carried Obama in the last election, and now New Jersey's doing the same thing. Nobody's saying a word.
Yeah, I mean, we're literally where class goes to die, I guess you could call it.
Hey. I wasn't trying to say anything about that. I'm just saying, New Jersey's a fairly liberal area, so it was just kind of surprising that, now that a liberal area is passing the same kind of ordinance we've had for a while now, nobody's really saying too much.
Jerk governor, who is, I hope, doesn't win the nomination or run for president.
Dude, Christie cannot win. I mean, think about this for a second. Think about this. If he ever tries to stand up to Congress, all they're going to do is buy him a box of Twinkies. That's
true. That is true.
I mean, he'll be like, no, I'm not going to pass this. Ooh, Twinkies, I'm in.
He's such a jerk. The way he speaks to people is so, like, degrading. He just puts them down. There was recently a man who got up at a conference, and he was talking about the pension plan, for his pension plan, how, Chris Christie's basically destroying it, everything this man has worked his life for. And the governor is like, I'm the governor, but I'm not the emperor, and he's just, like, yelling at this guy. This guy who's just questioning his elected official. I think it's so wrong. I feel like he's one of those people who was elected and just forgot who he's there to serve.
Oh, no, he knows precisely who he was there to serve. He's been there to serve himself the whole time.
Yeah, and the only reason he got into the governor race at all is because they wanted to get him out of being a prosecutor because he was putting so many people in jail. So, kudos to his job as a prosecutor. But because he was doing such a good job at that, they wanted to get him out of there. Didn't think he would win the governorship or the gubernatorial race, and then he actually won it. So they were like, "Oh, it's kind of like a Teddy Roosevelt situation when they were like, yeah, put him in as vice president. That way we can get him out of, destroying our police departments and whatever." And then he ended up winning, and then they were like, he ended up getting appointed. He didn't win, and then they were like, "Oh."
Well, you see, what happened was...
Yeah, well, yes, well, they weren't planning on McKinley getting shot.
Oh, yeah, this show just really went to a dark place. All right, so anyway, at this point, did have at least a couple of stories we were going to kind of touch on, but I think we may save those because we're actually getting pretty close to the break anyway. So I have to ask, because we've never actually talked about this before, and since we don't have a guest, this one's just kind of going to be all over the place today, because I didn't really prep much, because I try not to plan too much when I'm going to have a guest, because I don't want anybody to accuse me of trying to steer their commentary or trying to pre-plan with them and make sure they answer the questions correctly. So, and we do this every once in a while when Dave's hosting, and I don't think you and I have actually just taken a semi-break from the political stuff. What kind of stuff do you like watching on TV? Are you into all these comic book series that have come out, or?
Ooh, that is actually a good question. Okay, so what I like watching on TV, I'll be honest, my guilty pleasure is Judge Judy or Comedy Central.
Judge Judy? Is there a fetish thing going on there we need to know about, sir? Or, you know?
No. There is no fetish
Just saying,
thing.
She's a little old for you, but I might have the hookup. I don't know.
No. I don't know why. I always enjoyed how she owns, like, stupid people. People come on her show thinking how they're gonna, like, get around it, and she puts them on their place. I like watching Judge Judy. It's enjoyable. You never know what kind of trash is gonna come on that show. I also like, the typical Jon Stewart. I like, Colbert Report I liked, but now I watched the Larry Wilmore's The Nightly Show. But my favorite thing to watch on television is HBO's Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. He is perhaps one of the most funny people on one of those talk shows. He really, I know he's like this liberal nut, but he just lands jokes properly, I guess, and it's just very, very good. I try to stray away from watching, like, the typical Rachel Maddows and Chris Hayes, because it's literally just repetition of, basically you could watch Fox News, and whatever they disapprove of, I could be like, oh, okay, so I guess they're talking about this on MSNBC, saying this is the best thing in the world. So, I mean, I try to get my news from, like, the local sources, or just online, but yeah.
So basically what you're saying is you really don't ever take a break from political type stuff.
Yeah, no, I'm a political junkie, I guess.
Well, I am too for the most part. I do admit that every once in a while I will take a break, which is usually Saturday afternoons. It's kind of because I have a DVR, so normally I will kind of binge watch things like Arrow and The Flash and things like that just to get away from the political stuff, because through the week that's pretty much all I do is watch news stories and read articles, because, normally, unless I'm bringing in a ton of new shows, which we've been doing this week, I'm normally on air 6 days a week. This week, this is my first actual live show this week, so. But yeah, it's been a weird week for me anyway, because the credentials came through, so we've got a bunch of stuff we're working on to get ready for that behind the scenes. We've got my truck blew up, so I had to find a new car.
Your truck blew up?
Yeah, it's an older truck. I still have it. I'm actually going to get the engine rebuilt in it. It was 2001 Ford F-150. It had 240,000 miles on it when I gave up the Ghost, so it put in its workload. It finally decided it was done one day on the way home and from work on the highway. It either threw a rod or kicked a lifter. I'm not sure which, but by the time I got off the highway, I could. Luckily, my exit from where I live to the highway that I get off is only like 2 miles, because I could only do like 15 mile an hour all the way home. It was fun.
Well, I guess it gave it a good fight.
But yeah, I mean, I don't do car payments, so I've already actually went out and got another car. I now have a 2003 Buick Century that I paid $1,000 for, that I'm going to drive till the wheels fall off while I'm getting my truck fixed.
Yeah, I guess that's not bad.
So, but yeah, I actually, this truck was one of the last times I ever did a car payment, and I don't like them, so I don't know if I will ever actually buy a brand new car again unless I get to the point where I can just walk in and throw down cash, because I don't like payments.
That would be nice, just throw down a bunch of cash.
Well, you never know. Things keep going the direction they're going. We might all be able to do that at some point.
That would be awesome.
All right, so I guess we're going to go ahead and take a break a couple minutes early so we can go ahead and get moved on to the actual couple of stories that we had that we wanted to talk about today, since
sounds perfect.
Again, it appears we're not going to have our guests. So, all right, folks, we're going to go ahead and take the bottom of the hour break just a couple minutes early. We'll be right back. You are listening to Finding Common Ground. I am one half of the crew, Mr. Rick Robinson, and also with me today is Mr. Bryce Robbins, back from his short-term hiatus and his first experience with political elections. I'm sure, knowing him as I'm starting to get to know him now, somehow I don't think it will be his last. We will be right back here in just a couple minutes.
The staff of K98 Talk and the Spark Radio Network is proud to announce that our very own Rowdy Rick Robinson has been selected as one of the top conservative talk show hosts in the nation for his program America Off the Rail. Again, congratulations to Rowdy Rick Robinson for a job well done and another reason to stay connected to K98 Talk and the Spark Radio Network.
This is Misty, owner of Wax It Studio in Edmond, Oklahoma, and I'm here to talk to you about a skincare product called Theramedics. Theramedics has a wonderful line of products from anti-aging to hyperpigmentations all the way to acne. In fact, everyone at some point in our life is affected by acne. Acne can cause a great deal of embarrassment and anxiety, and in order to prevent and help other people, I have tapped into this wonderful product called Theramedics. Visit my website at www.prettyskindeep.com. Again, that's www.prettyskindeep.com.
We will never fully understand what we've asked of our military service members or their families, asking them to put themselves in harm's way, to endure it all. But we do understand that it's our turn, our duty, to keep them secure for the rest of their lives. Wounded Warrior Project long-term support programs help our most severely ill or injured veterans live independently, at no cost, for life, so that they might stand at ease. Join us at findwwp.org.
Wow.
All right, folks, we are back. We are live. This is Finding Common Ground. I'm Rick Robinson, and we will be continuing with the show now. Again, don't seem to have our guests, so we will continue with a little bit of pre-planned content I put in place just in case. And again, hats off to, or just want to give a shout out to our newest sponsor, the Wounded Warrior Project. So if you are interested, of course, we will be having them in a high rotation. So if you're interested in helping them in any way, make sure you look them up. All right, so I don't know. Do you want to start with the first story I sent you or the second one? Because the second one's kind of funny in my opinion.
You know what? I'd rather you break this one. I think these are stories that would start better from the conservative end.
Well, yeah, because you're probably going to think I'm an old, mean guy by the time I'm done.
No, I'm not. I promise.
Whatever. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to go ahead and start with this one just because, you know, this is something I noticed about a week ago. But like I said, this is my first return to live radio since I've been dealing with a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff with new shows coming in. And I actually just got an announcement of another one that will be starting in May. So, yeah, the things at this point are expanding so quickly, even the guy that helps me keep the website together is having trouble keeping up because we keep having to move things around as we bring in more content. Okay, so anyway, this is from Young Conservatives, and it actually did come from other sources as well. And this is the headline, and then I'm going to kind of delve into the story just a little bit. Dude, I really wish they'd stop putting these freaky things on the side of these, because it's like really distracting. Welfare Queen wants taxpayers to pick up the tab for fairy tale weddings and honeymoon. So far, this has had 4.8 thousand shares. I'm a little jealous. If entitlement thinking were a biological infection, then Anna Broom would have a seriously bad fever, but the cure for her isn't more cowbell. It's a full-on fairy tale wedding and honeymoon paid for by taxpayers. Yes, as sad as it is, people like this really do exist. Prepare for your daily dose of facepalm. And that's the lead-in from the Daily Mail. An unemployed woman has her heart set on a fairy tale church wedding and believes the taxpayers should foot the bill, as it is her basic human right to be a bride. Anna Broom of Gillingham in Kent has not worked since the age of 19, during which time she has claimed more than 1 million. Actually, it's even using the pound sign. So 1 million pounds in benefits. Which, in case anyone's wondering, no, I'm not saying hashtag, I'm talking British money. The jobless 33-year-old now wants an extra £10,000 to fund her dream traditional English wedding and party in a castle. Miss Broom is desperate for a church ceremony, designer dress, horse and carriage, like Katie Price, and champagne for her 50 guests. And she wants the taxpayers to stump up the further £2,000 for her honeymoon, where she hopes to jet off to Mexico.
I'm sorry. The equivalent of 1 million pounds is almost $1.5 million.
Yeah, I know.
How could this lady have gotten $1.5 million in all reality?
Well, you have to realize she hasn't worked since the age of 19. They don't actually discuss her age now, and what they're referring to is the yearly allotment of benefits that she's probably collected over time. And if you take into account what they've probably done, is if you take into account the amount of money it would actually take for her to exist at the level that she's existing at. Because for example, if you take into account here, if you have someone who's receiving food stamps and they're receiving housing benefits and they're receiving these benefits, if you actually look at the dollar amount it would take for them to sustain that if they were actually having to pay it, here in the state of Oklahoma, it's usually somewhere around $55,000 to $60,000 a year to live the way they're living with state benefits. So if you multiply that by several, maybe 20 years, then that is where you can wind up looking at very large lump sums of money.
Yeah, I understand that, yeah.
And actually, she's 33, so I guess we could kind of do the math. I kind of missed that part.
So it would just be, let's say she's getting... Alright, but yeah, keep reading the article, I'll do the math.
That's alright. She added, I want taxpayers to fund my $10,000 dream wedding. It's a basic human right to be a bride. I don't see why I should have to have a small wedding at a registry office. I wouldn't be able to fit in all my guests, and a church wedding is far more romantic. Okay, so all I'm going to say about this is, you can have a church wedding without it costing thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, whether it's American money or British money. I mean, I'm assuming anyway. I know here, my wife and I have been married now for, 13 years? We paid around $3,500 for our wedding, and we had 100 guests. And it wasn't actually in a church. We did it in a chapel, because it was cheaper. But we still had, and the actual pastor that we wanted to do our ceremony was there. And like I said, we paid $3,500 for our wedding, because I'm not going to go completely crazy and put myself into debt for something that's going to last for a single day. And I'm not going to stand up and go, ooh, this is a basic human right. Taxpayer-funded weddings. What the hell?
Yeah, I mean, I know that I've had one of the original United Nations Declaration of Human Rights books. And actually marriage is a human right, according to them, but I don't think it says tax-paid extravagant marriage is a human right. I mean, I obviously agree on this point that, that's ridiculous, and I'm a strong supporter of the welfare system. a workfare system. Sorry, workfare. My socialist left-wing buddies would call me a slave owner, but I'm not. But I do think that the welfare system is broken in the sense that at this point we have the lowest people in the labor force actually working when you work out the percentage-wise that in the past 50 years. It means not only, even though the unemployment rate is down, that is kind of meaningless because even though it's down, there's
the unemployment rate's down because they've changed how they can figure the numbers. They no longer count the folks that have given up and are no longer looking for work at all. They're like, oh, you've been out for this long and you're not working anymore, so you don't count.
Exactly, and those people are accounting for more people who are just not working than ever before. It's like 40% of Americans have just simply are not in an active job. So, that's kind of scary to consider that 40% of these people aren't working. But the problem is, I feel that it's a two-way street. And I know this is probably where we're going to disagree, but I would say that, to these people, this is where the government should step in and say, look, there are some exceptions, obviously, people who literally just can't work, but to those who are able-bodied citizens, say, look, we have roads that are crumbling. We have bridges that are being destroyed. We need new energy infrastructure. Now, we need all these jobs to be filled, all this stuff to be done. Do it, and you will get your continuation of welfare. You will get, and I would say they could even do better on the welfare system. If you have someone who's just currently unemployed sitting around all day, have them install solar panels on the local schools or municipality buildings or paving roads. I think that's the best way to go. And that's, what Bernie Sanders always advocates for. It just makes sense to me. But, of course, he doesn't advocate for the welfare part.
Well, yeah, I don't understand, honestly, at this point, why we don't. Because a lot of these folks that are now sitting on unemployment rolls, we're not just talking fast food workers anymore. These are skilled laborers. These are people that just don't have a place to be anymore. So why can we not put them to work and fix the things that are broken in exchange for the services that they're already receiving? Because one, it makes them get up, get out, and be active. The thing that annoys me about the handout system that we have going instead of the hand-up system, and this is by design. Nobody can tell me otherwise, and I know there are people that disagree with me. But the simple fact of the matter is there are factions of the government that want its populace dependent on them, because if you're dependent on them, you have no choice but to continue to vote for them, because otherwise, who are you going to vote for? The guys that say, hey, you're stuck at home, you can't find a job, we've taken care of your housing, we've got your food covered, vote for me and I'll give you more, or you're going to vote for the other guy that says, hey, we're going to try to help you actually get on your feet and make this a program where instead of you just getting something, we're going to have you do a little bit of work, a little bit at a time, so that you're still keeping your skills up and you're helping your community at the same time. I know who 95% of those people are going to vote for, and the problem is the side that, because there are people in our government that agree with everything that you've just said. The problem is they won't actually come out and say it the way that you just said it, because the people that are helping them get where they need to be are firmly in the other side's camp, because if we're dependent on the government, we have no choice but to continue to support that government. And as we keep going into this system that was started for the best of intentions, when it was started, it was a good idea. But the simple fact of the matter is there have been way too many generations of politicians that have found out a way to pervert it to make sure that they can use it for ultimate control. And that's my issue with it, is it needs to be a hand up, not a hand out. Because, and this is the thing that I don't understand, even from folks like atheists and people that say, that we're basically just part of the natural system. There's no difference between man and other animals. Then why can we not realize the fact that, there are specific signs in national park areas that say don't feed the animals because you're going to make them dependent? These are the same folks that tell me the same thing doesn't apply to the human species, and I'm sitting here saying, if you specifically, you know who I'm talking to, believe that we are no different than the animals, other than we may or may not have higher intelligences, which as we learn more about them, we're finding that we may not be as unique there as we think. But you're telling me that we shouldn't feed the bears or the ducks because they become dependent and don't want to move on, but it's okay for us to continue to feed the human being, which in your own estimation is no different than the rest of the animal kingdom. I'm confused by that logic.
Well, I mean, my take on it is this, that everybody should be putting in their fair share to ultimately move society to the highest point of production. In an economic standpoint, you'd be looking at a production possibility frontier, and we're trying to move to point E, outside the curve. Essentially, it's impossible, but you keep expanding the curve outward. So in this sense, my take is that we should be having, I read an article, a couple articles actually, that said the biggest 14 corporations in the United States have successfully kept over $1 trillion that would have been taxed overseas in like the Cayman Islands because the tax system is broken. So my take on it is that where welfare recipients we should rearrange the welfare system so that more welfare recipients are encouraged to have jobs that better society, such as paving roads, installing energy infrastructure, things of that nature. We should have those at the very, very top paying their way down, because I think the ultimate issue here that is causing all of this is income inequality and just simple economics in this country. I mean, under the Bush administration, we went from having almost 400,000 factories. We lost so many factories and manufacturing jobs that the standard job these days is more like becoming a fast food worker. So when you look at, these people demanding, $15 an hour to be at McDonald's, at first glance, you might say, who the hell deserves $15 for flipping a burger? I could do that in, my house. It's not something special. But then you think about it, a lot of these people's factories are gone, or jobs have been left. These are the only jobs that seem to be remaining are in the food industry of some sort. So I think it's a two-way street. It comes on all levels of class, from the lower class to the upper class. I think our priorities are just not right in this country as of now.
Well, I mean, the only thing that I can say there is for all of you folks that keep saying that the folks working in the fast food industry should make more money, at least until somebody figured out a way to drop the bottom out of the oil market. You probably should have looked, I believe it was either North Dakota or South Dakota, where they have been doing a lot of different types of drilling. Because of the fact that they had so many high-paying, high-demand jobs there, everywhere that was in that particular area had no choice but to raise their minimum pay wage. Fast food workers in the towns that were doing the excessive drilling were paying anywhere between $15 to $17 an hour entry-level positions to try to make sure that people actually would still do those jobs. My stance on all of this is if we would stop making the government and try to regulate what a minimum wage should be and start rewarding businesses for actually paying people above the minimum wage by giving them incentives to pay more money, as in tax breaks or whatever else we could come up for them, then at some point they would actually feel the need to raise the wages on their own. Because the issue with if the government steps in and suddenly makes every single business pay somebody $15 an hour, that's not going to work in all areas of the country. There are rural areas in my state that would be completely put out of business, because in those rural areas, the $7.50 that is the minimum wage standard is actually, in some cases, a livable wage because it's a smaller area. So if you start making them pay twice that, then there are going to be parts of the country that are going to become dust bowls. But if you give companies incentives to pay more money, then they don't pass the extra expenses on to the consumer because they don't feel the need to do so. The issue with the minimum wage hike, and I've now been through 3. I keep thinking it was only 2, but it has been 3. Each time I have seen the minimum wage raised by the federal government, the prices of every single item in the grocery store has gone up, depending on the amount of the raise in minimum wage, anywhere from 15 cents to almost nearly $1. And the issue is that means that for the basic items that you were buying the night before, you technically have less money in your wallet now, because all they do is pass it on to the consumer. Now, we can either start fining the companies for doing that, or we can find a smart way to get these things done. The first thing I would do is, like I said, give them incentives to pay people more money by giving them some form of tax breaks. Another thing that would work great with the Cayman Island situation that you were just talking to, let's do away with the tax code. Let's make it a flat tax. That way, it doesn't matter whether you're a corporation or you're a person panhandling. When you go into a store to buy something, you pay a tax that goes to both your city and also the federal government. And if you are below a certain wage, and you can prove you're below a certain wage because you actually have a taxable income level, an actual trackable through a W-2, then you can get what's called a prebate card, where you swipe the card before you make your purchases, and your taxes are waived if you are below a certain level. But if you're panhandling and therefore not declaring your income, anything that you buy is taxed at the register. If you are someone who's making millions of dollars a year and you're paying $300,000 for a car, which I know in this day and age is actually closer to about 1.5, then 10 to 15% of that purchase actually goes into the federal coffers. That way, everyone is technically paying their fair share, unless you're too broke to pay anything, because the ones that spend more money will be taxed more, the ones that spend less money will be taxed less, and the ones that are trying to get around the tax system by working under the table still get taxed anyway.
Well, I mean, I do understand that logic, but I've always been a strong supporter of the progressive tax. The idea that if you make more...
I think you just like it because it says progressive.
No, that's true too. No, but I always felt that progressive taxation is a better way to go, because if you're making more money, percentage-wise, you should pay more. The best analogy I've ever heard for this was it's like going under the George Washington Bridge. So you pay. Hang on.
Before you go too much further, the thing that never works with that is because we have all of these lobbyist groups and everybody else that are in place. So as soon as somebody says, hey, if you're making more money, you should pay more, the thing about it is, and the thing that nobody on your side of the argument wants to talk about, is if you really look at the tax breakdown, the people that are paying or that are making the most money are the ones that are paying the majority of the tax bill as it stands now.
Well, I mean, it just seems that to me, those breakdowns suggest that, the wealthiest Americans are paying a lot, and as they should be. But there's still a lot more that they can afford to pay, because I believe
So wait, just because they can afford to pay it, they should?
No, because they have led us to these problems. That this greed that we have in our society has ultimately driven us to the problems that we're at, that they should pay for the way out of it. I mean, you want to look at the biggest banks in America, who's not only fund the presidential elections,
but this is my point. The quickest way to fix that is to go to a flat rate tax where everybody who purchases anything, whether it's a corporation or a person, is taxed at the register, and some of that money goes to the government. There's no way around that. The only people that should not have to pay anything are people that are, let's say for the sake of argument, below whatever the national poverty average are. They get a card, they swipe it, they don't pay anything. They get what's called a prebate. Because then nobody can argue about it anymore, because the corporations that are spending millions of dollars a day to buy food, whatever the hell else they have to buy, because they all buy from a register at one point or another, they're paying their fair share. The folks that are paying millions of dollars for yachts, houses, and cars would be paying their fair share, because there would be a tax that would be attached to that. So I understand that you're a fan of the progressive system, but I'm telling you right now, the progressive system doesn't work. And my biggest issue with the progressive tax system is this tax system was supposed to be temporary. This was passed during it was either World War I or World War II, and Congress votes whether or not to keep it. I think it's every 2 to 3 years. And of course they're going to keep it, because that's how they get their pay raises. But the simple fact of the matter is the system is broken. The easiest way to fix it is to scrap it and make it to where no matter what you're making, if you can't prove that you're below a certain level in poverty, you have no choice but to pay a tax on the things that you purchase. Because how many people right now, and I know this because I have a state job, how many people right now are working jobs where they are paid cash, or they are paid what is commonly referred to as under the table, and therefore they can make $100,000, $200,000, $350,000 a year by the time they're done doing all of the things that they do, but they make sure that they're being paid in cash in small bits here and there, and they don't ever have to claim a dollar of that. That's my point. There are too many ways around this particular system, and in my opinion, it needs to just go away. Either a flat tax or a fair tax makes so much more sense, because with the technology we have available today, there's no reason we shouldn't be able to assess a fee at a register. And if you can't prove that you're below a certain income level, then you have no choice but to pay those fees.
Well, let me just propose this question then. If, the top 5 Americans who work so hard, right? They own 62% of the nation's entire wealth. Should they not be taxed more for the jobs for the money that they bring in? I mean, let's not forget here.
But Bryce, you're still beating a dead horse at this point. They would be being taxed more because how much money do they spend every day?
But I don't know if you can go off that logic. That just because they spend more, that ultimately says, okay, well then this is,
Okay, Bryce, you're missing the point. Let's say for the sake of argument, because you know as well as I do, because I've been there. I've made $300,000 a year. I was dropping about $1,000 a day like it was candy. So if you put on a 15% flat tax rate on the $1,000 a day that someone who on average spends when they're making about $300,000 a year, because that's kind of median. I had people that were making around the same income level that I did at that time, and that's usually when we got together and we were hanging out, we'd kind of go over a few things and be like, hey, we're kind of, spending around the same amount of money. So let's just use that as a median level. That means that for the $1,000 a day that someone is spending on average, to go eat dinner, to go buy lunches, to go pay for food, to go buy new suits, everything that they're swiping their card for or paying cash for is hit at the register with a 15% tax. What is 15% of $1,000?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I kind of zoned out. Please do the math. Actually,
It's $150.
Yeah.
So that means that for every person who's spending $1,000 a day, the federal government is making $150. That means for these guys that are going out spending millions of dollars a day because they have it in their wallets and they have it readily available, that means the federal government, even on $1 million, would be making $150,000 a day in purchasing power for anybody who's spending $1 million a day in their income. And there are people that do that.
I mean, I do understand that, but in the sense of the flat tax, from what we've seen, when flat taxes have been attempted to be implemented, and one of the most ones that I've talked about in my econ class was, I believe it was Herman Cain who was proposing his flat tax, was actually just a scam. And the way that they were trying to be implemented actually just made the poor pay more and the rich pay less. The typical things that we hear. Essentially,
okay, you're talking about things that aren't in the realm of discussion that we're having at the moment. I'm not talking about a flat tax system that somebody's trying to set up as some sort of a Ponzi scheme. I'm actually talking about a flat tax system that is designed to make sure that the federal government receives the revenue that it ought to be receiving. I mean, I have to be completely honest with you. If it were up to me, there would be no taxes at all. But
then how did we run everything? I'm just curious.
How did we run it before World War II?
Well, people just didn't pay income tax prior to World War II or federal tax, but they still pay taxes to their state.
I understand that, but that's what I'm asking you. We went how many hundreds of years without a federal income tax system, and we still had roads, we still had bridges. So in my estimate, I mean, if you want my honest answer, there shouldn't be any taxes at all. I mean, simply put, at least at the federal level, there should be no taxes levied. The states should be able to impose taxes because, they're the ones that were up until a few decades ago. They were the ones that were responsible for the roads and bridges upkeep until the federal government decided they needed to get in the middle of it. But if we're going to have a tax system, the only way to make it fair, which is one of your side's favorite words, is to make it where it's spending based, because then it doesn't matter if it's a person, it doesn't matter if it's a corporation, it doesn't matter if it's someone who's panhandling, they're all going to have to pay a share. Panhandling, working under the table, working for cash, however they work, they're going to have to pay a share. The only people that would be exempt are the people that have verifiable income sources and it's below a certain dollar amount. That way they don't have to worry about paying anything because they can't afford to. And the ones that spend millions of dollars a day on things like houses, cars, boats, trips, each one of those purchases would have a 15% flat tax assessed to it that would go back to the federal government. There is no way to not make that work if it is approached honestly. And I understand that people have proposed it before and it has not been an honest approach. But if it is actually done honestly and as a straightforward flat tax, it would fit. All right, folks. Well, that's going to do it for the live primetime replay of the Finding Common Ground episode from this Saturday. We'll have it up in the podcast version here in the next day or so. If you were liking it, make sure you go ahead and check it out again. Listen to the last few minutes. We weren't done yet. It actually ran quite a bit longer than our normal hour format, which is one reason why I'm having to cut it short now. At this point, because of prior engagements, Mr. Steve Long will not be doing a show today either, so we'll be queuing up his first return episode here live on Talk from a few weeks back, where he interviewed the host of Liberty.me, and I'm queuing that up as we speak, so bear with me for just one moment. All right, so we do have that queuing up for you now. You guys enjoy the show.
We are controlling transmission. If we wish to make it louder, we will bring up the volume. If we wish to make it softer, we will tune it to a whisper. Sit quietly and we will control all that you hear. We repeat, there is nothing wrong. You are about to participate in a great adventure.
We interrupt this program with a special bulletin. America is now under martial law. All constitutional rights have been suspended. Remain calm. Do not panic. The comfort you've demanded is now mandatory. National security is more important than individual will.
Hey folks, it is Monday night and you're listening to Liberty Unfiltered. For those regular listeners, yes, this is not the normal day that I am on. It will be from now on. I am now on Mondays. I am back on K98 Talk. You can join me here tonight in the chat room just by going to k98talk.com/chat-room. So join us in here, and we're going to have a lot of fun tonight. Tonight, my guest is Jeffrey Tucker. He has been with us before. I want to welcome him back. Tonight, we're going to be talking about practical anarchy. We're going to learn some ways that you can apply anarchy into your daily life. A lot of people seem to think that anarchy is this concept that's all about chaos and no just chaotic, willy-nilly, everybody just out doing crazy things. But in fact, anarchy is simply just a matter of not anything, something that isn't directed by the state. You can find anarchy in practically everything around us. In fact, according to my guest, he says that anarchy is all around us, including in our churches, our friendships, and especially the internet. So, let me welcome to the show once again, Mr. Jeffrey Tucker. Jeff, you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Steve, for having me.
Great. Thanks for coming on again.
Sure.
Some of the things you've written contend that people can live in peaceful cooperation without state control. Yeah, and so what we're going to talk about today is just to give people some ideas of how, number one, anarchy is already all around them, and number two, how they can apply it to their own lives.
Well, I think in many ways we already do apply it in our own lives. I mean, most of our interactions day to day exist on completely voluntary cooperation. The police aren't surrounding us all the time telling us, what to eat, when to get up, what kind of soap to use in the shower, whether to shower, what job to take, who we're going to fall in love with. how we're going to spend our money. I mean, this is the fact is that for the most part, and even under Leviathan conditions that we have today, the state is absent in most of our lives, and that's for a reason. It's because most people don't like it and don't need it. So, I mean, I'm always amazed at the people who say that anarchy wouldn't work, because once they reflect on their own lives and their own doings, and their subdivisions, their apartment units, the places they eat, the grocery stores they go to, they'd realize that human volition is the thing that makes society work at all. And it's not the state. The state does not make this happen. It's anarchy itself that works. And just a brief reflection on your own life will show that. So it's always funny to me when people talk about anarchy as leading to chaos. As a matter of fact, the absence of the state encourages solutions and human associations. The presence of the state does exactly the opposite. It divides people and causes enormous problems. It leads to all sorts of poverty and every kind of human suffering. And this is just the practical reality. Most people who imagine there has to be a state are always in their own minds thinking of a state that they don't know, that really doesn't exist. Some ideal type that they think should exist but doesn't exist. And yet it comes right down to it, they end up sort of endorsing the thing they hate. I'm always intrigued by people who are not anarchists, because as much as they hate the present status quo, there's a weird sense in which they fear anarchy even more. And I kind of would like to see people get over that and realize that actually anarchy is the source of all the beauty in our lives.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how some people have this perception of anarchy just based off of, I guess, previous perception of it through music and through film, without actually digging into, like I said, the idea that it's already here in a lot of ways, especially with technology.
Well, that's certainly true. I mean, the internet is an amazing case, because essentially it was privatized in 1995. With the web browser invented and radio waves, auctioned off, and the government sort of bailed from all of its interest it had in the internet, apart from a little slice of real estate. And over the last 20 years, we've seen, life completely transformed for billions of people. It's connected us as never before, and we've created whole worlds without any government direction at all. I mean, the only role the government's had in the internet has been to annoy, companies like Microsoft, or badger Google into getting a pipeline, the NSA surveillance or something like that. But essentially, the government's done nothing productive or wonderful. It didn't do anything to bring about the app economy that we all live off, every single day. I mean, this is the way we get along and the way we associate and the way we conduct our lives now. It's all a result of this sort of spontaneous interaction of people. So anarchy really is working. I have to tell you that I read an article today by one of my favorite thinkers and writers, Ayn Rand. It was written in 1964, and it was a kind of a really vigorous and strong case against anarchism. And, I take her very seriously. And I'm glad to, if you want to talk about what that article is about and some of what's wrong with it. But, I reflected on it very deeply today, just reading through it and thinking about her fears. Ultimately, it's very strange. There's a sense in which, even though she was a very strong believer in freedom, she ultimately believed that freedom fails at some fundamental level. And I think she's just wrong about that.
So she's not necessarily the anarchist idealist that everybody seems to think she is.
No. I mean, she believed in a very limited state, but it's very strange when you read her article, because the state she believes in is not one that exists. It's one that she's sort of imagined in her mind. But the existing state she regards as being a looter and a parasite and something that's causing disorder and problems in society. And she freely admits this and argues this very passionately, but she still holds out the possibility that there could be some sort of ideal state that would just sort of protect property rights and keep the law and be an expression of objective values and that kind of thing.
When in fact we see the state doing the exact opposite more and more every day. They're taking away property rights. They're taking away personal liberties.
Yeah, she admits that, but she really does imagine that. I mean, she doesn't actually say this in the article, but I was actually thinking about this. It's like, does Rand think that as bad as the present situation is, that anarchy would even be worse? And I think she does, actually. I mean, it's for that whole kind of generation of classical liberal intellectuals, and I include my own mentor, Ludwig von Mises in this, and of course it goes all the way back,
Yeah.
They all, and this includes Hazlitt and Bastiat and so many great thinkers. But in the end, they were sort of Hobbesians. They had this perception that if we unplugged the state, that some terrible nightmare would come about that humanity wouldn't know how to solve. It's a very interesting thing that people who imagine there has to be a state, yes, of course they know that it has to be constructed out of something, right? I mean, you have to use the existing firmament of society to construct this thing that they call the state. But they don't imagine that same society that would construct the state is capable of solving their problems without the state. So it's a little bit of a paradox.
Well, most people today don't seem to have the same concept of the state as you or I or others do. They have become more and more distracted as time goes by, and they're not even aware that their freedoms are eroding. For instance, your book, A Beautiful Anarchy. There was a one of the themes in it. It was kind of draw attention to this reality that we're in that most people don't even seem to notice.
No, that's right. I tend to see the state as nothing but a drag on our lives. I mean, most of everything we experience is wonderful. Everything we experience is wonderful. It's an extension of anarchy. And if you look at the real way the state works in the world, all it does is sort of pillage us and stop us from doing what we otherwise would want to do. So what is it that we want to do? I mean, that's sort of the fundamental question that all social thinkers, ask. What is it that humanity aspires to achieve, and what means are there available to achieve those things? And I would say that gradually over the course of historical evolution, we've increasingly come to understand that what we want is peace and prosperity, and it's true that there's a widespread disagreement on exactly how to get there, but to my evaluation, the things that are standing most in the way of these ideals of peace and prosperity are governments around the world. They are the number one impediment to the realization of the dreams that are widely held on the left and the right. It's just that people aren't entirely aware of that.
Right. But we have so many tools that can be used that are not directed by the state, or at least not yet, not controlled by the state. Tools that we can use every day, and that we do use every day, and don't even think about it. Smartphones. There was an article that you wrote recently. I don't remember how recent it was, but it was "Making the World a Freer Place," where you mentioned things like smartphones, crowdsourcing, open source software, alternative currencies, homeschooling. All of these things we use to get away from this control.
And they work better. That's what's ironic to me, is that these non-state unapproved, permissionless innovations in the app world and in homeschooling and so many other areas of life are actually functioning much better than governments. And it's very interesting to me, and I think it's an absolutely thrilling thing about our time, that the times in which we live, that we have real brilliant examples all around us of non-state alternatives to state programs. And we have private arbitration as compared to government courts. We have Uber relative to municipal taxi monopolies. Right. We have private schooling compared to public schooling, and so on. I mean, we're increasingly in the position, thanks to entrepreneurship and innovation, to be able to compare the world that private enterprise is capable of creating to the world that the government's creating, and humanity is choosing the private alternatives over the government plans. And in a way, area of life.
In a way, we're kind of going full circle, because all of this innovation existed. I mean, not these specific innovations, but innovation in general existed before government control. One example I can bring up is private charity. Private charity existed long before government welfare came onto the scene, and it worked well for hundreds of years.
It's so true. It's one of the great tragedies that humanity has no memory of this. But like in the late 19th century, there was a vast philanthropic sector. I mean, it was just the number of orphanages in this country that were run by private charity, who created a business about what you would consider the size of Microsoft today.
Yeah,
it was a huge enterprise, not in the sense that it was for profit, but in the sense that it employed a ton of people. It was a gigantic priority for philanthropists and private individuals and really everybody. It was all kind of shut down in the progressive era with a sort of a gradual nationalization of charity and a pillaging of the large fortions.
The state assumed control over this.
That's right.
Over this endeavor, and to this day, it still uses its force to exercise that control.
Yeah, and as a crowding out that took place, and so this is one of the great tragedies of life under the state, is we are not fully aware of the costs that we've paid for constructing this gigantic leviathan all around us. The costs are really largely invisible to us because they consist of things that were displaced long before we were born, or were never invented because the state monopolized things. And that's what's really striking about our times, is that we're actually seeing how private enterprise is making an in-run around the government. And this kind of progress is taking place every day. I mean, you only need to reflect on the fact that, 20 years ago, the only way to get a message from me to you would have been to call on a government-owned phone or send a letter, delivered with a government employee carrying around sacks on his back, Yeah. And now, there's so many ways for us to communicate. It's getting ridiculous. I mean, every day I'm juggling SMS and Snapchat and Facebook messaging and texts to my Skype accounts, and it's just unthinkable. Not to mention emails and messaging through Liberty Me, and it's just
even 10 years ago, who would have thought that social media would have grown this big?
Yeah, and we have a desperate desire to connect with each other. I mean, that's what social media really illustrates. I mean, it's interesting. I feel like to some extent, what private enterprises are in our time is revealing to us is all the ways in which humanity is sort of desperate to cooperate with each other, you know?
Yeah.
And yet we've heard for generations that we need a government to get us to cooperate with each other. You know,
because the government's so good at cooperating with people.
Yeah. Well, let me just want to give one quick example, because I'm very interested in this Rand article, but not to pick on this brilliant woman, but so she's writing this article in like April of 1964, and it's funny. She gives two examples. The first one she gives is that you have to have a monopoly on government, or else people will just fight. Like, for example, if Jim subscribes to government A, or a set of laws A, and John subscribes to a set of laws B, and there's a conflict between the two individuals, and representatives of each individual legal system show up at each other's doors, and neither recognizes the authority of the other, what are they going to do? And she stops her narrative right there, and she says, I'll let you fill in the rest. Okay, so that's a funny comment, because I think she presumes that the answer is that they will fight until the death. But the actual reality is that, and most likely, they would try to figure out some way to resolve their differences peacefully. That's the world that I think is emerging, and the one that I think we know, and she was just wrong about that.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think more people. I mean, there's your scattered few who have a propensity to violence, but in general, I think humanity is moving toward wanting peace with each other.
Right, and the other thing is that there's really a strong market out there for keeping those people who are not socially adapt or not cooperative with others, keeping them at bay. I mean, more and more we use private security anyway. We don't use government security. And there's a gigantic market for private security these days. In almost every major American city, there's subscription services for private security to deal with the problem.
Well, right. Look where government security has gotten us. I mean...
And there's another example she gives that's rather funny. She's trying to think through this, and she says, let's say you lose somebody stole your wallet, but you don't know who it is. Under a state of anarchy, she says, a person would go house to house, break down people's doors, interrupt them in their dinner hour, and club them on the head and demand their wallets, and keep doing this, 30, 40, 50 houses, until they find the perpetrator, and there would be nothing to stop this, she says, in absence of government. Now, this is an intriguing scenario because, of course, I guess you can't rule out the possibility that somebody might attempt that, but they would probably attempt that whether or not there's a government.
Right.
There's plenty of neighborhoods in this country where that goes on all the time, and government does nothing to stop it.
Well, that sounds strikingly familiar to what the government themselves did up in Boston.
That's true. You're right. The only institution that actually goes house to house and does that is the state, because it's the only one that can get away with that. Because otherwise people consider that to be outrageous and immoral, and it would probably be killed. I mean, if I went up and down the street right now and started breaking down people's houses, I mean, eventually somebody would call the police, but more likely I would just be shot.
I was going to say, you'd probably get shot.
You get shot long before the police show up.
But yeah, no. If that happens, if the police come banging on your door and you shoot them, then you're branded a criminal.
Yeah, that's right.
Just because you were defending yourself. So yeah.
But it's interesting, this sort of scenario that she concocts in her head. And I would say this is typical of non-anarchists. They just have this sort of this fantasy fear that something is going to go really wrong with the world without government.
Yeah.
And I think this is just wrong, actually, because, and I think you know this if you just sort of trace the steps through your life, day to day, whatever it is you do. If you work in an office, or you stay at home, or you're a soccer mom, or whatever it is you're doing, you're in the program on the internet or whatever. I mean, how often does the state actually touch you? At all in your life, except for basically stealing your money and stopping you from doing things that you want to do that are productive and good things, you know?
Oh, you mean like feeding hungry people in a park?
That's it.
Or collecting rainwater?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. This is what the state does. I mean, it's sort of out there to annoy us, like almost every day. I mean, I'm intrigued by the news these days about California's water shortage, because I mean, here you have 70% of the world's surface is covered with water, but somehow government's able to manage to make a massive shortage out of it by not pricing water properly. This is the essence of the problem, and it's really intriguing. So they've mispriced it. They allow the ruling class and the elites to get all the water they want, namely large agricultural farming interests, and then the regular consumers have to pay through rationing.
Right.
It's really just a paradigmatic example of what happens under government control. Irrationality followed by massive coercion.
Right.
It's fun and interesting to sort of think about, like, what is the origin of non-anarchist thought. And the more I think about it, I think it all has to trace to Thomas Hobbes. I think he's really the origin of modernity's obsession with the idea that we have to have a state. He had this perception that in absence of the state, life would be brutish and short and violent, and we'd all just be fighting with each other all the time. And I think that's just empirically wrong. It's not impossible that that's true, and there are places in the world where there's nonstop war and conflict. But creating the state does not actually improve that. It's very likely, in fact, it's almost guaranteed to actually worsen it.
Well, wasn't most war and conflict the result of some kind of hierarchical control in the first place?
Yeah, that's always true in all
lust for power.
Yeah, I mean, all civil wars in the world are a result of people trying to get hold of the levers of power. That's what drove it. It's always been the case. Yeah, it's not the private sector that leads to war. It's governments. So if you don't like war, you should definitely not like government. I mean, it's always fomenting war all the time.
Kind of surprises me that there aren't more anarchists out there with the thing. Some of the news stories that we've heard over the last few years.
I think that there are ever more anarchists out there. They just maybe don't identify it as that. But anarchism is more popular now than probably it's ever been in the rest of history.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, maybe we can talk about how people can apply this concept of anarchy into their daily life.
Okay.
All right. Well, we'll be right back, folks. You're listening to Liberty Unfiltered on K98 Talk. We'll be right back.
Good day to you. As a distinguished gentleman, I need a serious source of news. One that doesn't waste my time when I'm enjoying my tea and crumpets.
White powdered! White powdered!
One that catches the most important stories of the day.
The poop plane.
Was it jet poop? Real serious nonsense. Mondays, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, now on K98 Talk.
I'm gonna just move in another direction towards the classy.
We'll be classy and not say dildo.
They're completely different from shows that aren't.
Hey everybody, this is Jason, host of According to Me. I'd like to invite you to check out my show. It's a 2-hour show that lasts 60 minutes in...
listen, I hate to interrupt, but one thing I can do is read off a script. Just say, let me be clear a lot. It works.
President Obama, I can handle this. It's a radio promo. I'm not green. I've done this before.
Did someone say green?
Now, Al Gore is here. Listen, I'm just trying to record a radio promo. Do you mind?
Now, do you say good things about me on the show?
No, not at all. But if it makes you feel any better, I rip on Republicans just as much.
The AM radio frequencies give off very high levels of radiation.
Look, my show is on the internet, which you invented. Can I just do my promo?
I got a pen. I can veto that, you know.
I know you got a pen. It's not a law. It's a radio promo. Listen, just listen to my show. Barack Obama and Al Gore hate it, so you're going to love it.
Here's an executive order. Don't listen to his show. He doesn't like me. He's racist. And he doesn't recycle either.
That's it. I'm done. It's According to Me, Wednesdays, 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on K98 Talk.
This is Misty, owner of Waxit Studio in Edmond, Oklahoma, and I'm here to talk to you about a skincare product called Theramedics. Theramedics has a wonderful line of products from anti-aging to hyperpigmentations all the way to acne. In fact, everyone at some point in our life is affected by acne. Acne can cause a great deal of embarrassment and anxiety, and in order to prevent and help other people, I have tapped into this wonderful product called Theramedics. Visit my website at www.prettyskindeep.com. Again, that's www.prettyskindeep.com.
K98 Talk is expanding its lineup for 2015. This means we are expanding our advertising base. Whether you're a startup trying to push through to the next level or an established business trying to supplement your advertising budget, web-based advertising is a solid investment. Thanks to Talk's newest partnership with TuneIn Radio and instant access to our sister station, K98 FM, we give you worldwide access at a reasonable cost. Interested parties should email us at sales@k98fm.com.
All right, folks, we are back. You're listening to Liberty Unfiltered here on K98 Talk. And my name is Steve Long. I'm the host. I am here with my guest, Jeffrey Tucker. Jeff, again, thanks for coming on the show tonight.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
So I think before we get into this whole idea of giving some practical advice on how to apply anarchy into our lives, I was wondering if you could kind of introduce the idea of, I think it's a term that you phrased, functioning freedom.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that I think the first step is to realize that freedom is not just some, a vague abstraction that we have to hope for at some point in the future. We can be free in our own lives today by doing certain perfect things.
Yeah, you know what? That reminds me of a quote from that article I had mentioned of yours earlier, Making the World a Freer Place. There was a quote that was, and I apologize if I'm paraphrasing, liberty isn't something to believe, it's something to do.
Yeah, but look, that took me a very long time to realize this. I got interested in this topic of liberty and libertarianism almost as a kind of an abstraction, like the way I wanted the world to function. Mm-hmm. Which I believed, in order to achieve that, you had to get certain changes from the government. You had to have a kind of a universal conversion to libertarianism. Then you had to get a sort of top-down political reform that recognized property rights or whatever. It took me a very long time to come to the realization that freedom is a practical reality that we are going to have to learn to live in our own lives, and that to wait for freedom for the state to change is a profound mistake, and it's never happened that way in all of history. Freedom comes about because people start living it, and then eventually the political system comes to respond. A great example of that is marijuana, actually. Mm-hmm. 40 years ago, Richard Nixon declared war on pot, and it said that he would extinguish it and just eradicate it from our shores.
How's that working for him?
Yeah, and the reason why it's becoming legal in ever more places and is in de facto legal and probably half the big cities in the country, if not more, is because people didn't comply. They just went on with their lives. They wouldn't be kept in cages. They pursued their own preferences, and eventually the political systems defer to what's going on anyway. And that's pretty much the history of freedom in the 20th century. Look at something like the repeal of prohibition. It wasn't repealed because academics made powerful arguments and persuaded politicians.
It's because people just did it anyway.
Yeah, it's because people just did it, and eventually politicians have to defer to what's going on in the culture. So it's just a question of whether or not you're going to wait for the political system to change, or whether you're going to act in your own life. And I mean, ultimately, in the end, you have a responsibility as a human being to act as if you're free. And you have a very, in the scheme of things, our lives are very short, and you have to make the best of them that you possibly can. And it's just not a viable strategy to just, sit and pray and wait and vote, and, that sort of thing. I think it's extremely important to step up and embrace your responsibility as a human being and live as if you're free. I'm not suggesting that people take inordinate risks, but life is a little bit risky, and a life of utter compliance is boring and will lead to personal failure. Most of the great successes in our time have come about from people going outside the central plan, doing what they're not supposed to do, and eventually the political authorities, once they're overwhelmed with the reality, have to defer. This is how revolutions happen. It's not because people are obediently complying with the range of choices that the establishment gives us. It's because they break up the range of choices and do other things. And I think there's many, many ways that people can do this in their own lives.
So, let me ask you this. Do you think anarchy, the concept of anarchy is like a utopian idea?
I don't. I mean, I should say I do believe in utopia, in the sense that I think we should long for the best possible life that we can. But at the same time, I don't see that the introduction of a purely anarchist system would lead to some wild, implausible upheaval. I think all that would really happen under a state of anarchy is that we'd be richer, and we'd be freer, and we'd have more options and choices open to us in life. That's the only real big change I could imagine seeing. I think corporations would probably be smaller and more competitive. We'd have more products available. We'd just generally have better lives, and we'd all be richer. And people wouldn't say there's a massive amounts of human suffering in the world that's caused by the state. All that would just completely disappear. That doesn't mean the world would be a perfect place, but I think it would be vastly better, and we'd experience vast amounts of economic growth, a plunge in unemployment, and longer lives, healthier lives. I think all this stuff is available to us, and the only reason that's kept at bay is because of public policies. I mean, that's the essence of public policy today, is to cut off options and to make the present and the future not as bright as it otherwise would be.
And so the key for people really isn't necessarily to fight against the state, but more maybe work around the state.
Yeah, I like to think of government as a giant sort of mountain that stands in the way, that's just interfering with the progress of history and the progress of our lives. And you can sit and curse it, and tell it to go away, and scream at it and yell at it, and lobby hard and make rational arguments and everything. Or you can just get smart, You can dig underneath, you can go around it, you can build a helicopter, fly over it. And that's, I think, the situation we're in today. And most of the progress and freedom is in our times is actually occurring in exactly this way. I think about things like TaskRabbit undermining occupational licensure laws, or Airbnb destroying zoning laws, or Lyft and Uber making a mess of municipal taxi laws, or things like cryptocurrency destroying the monopoly of nationalized money, or the lending club challenging the cartelized banking system. And there's so many revolutionary things going on all around us. Crowdfunding displacing old-style capital markets, and cop block technologies that are actually making it possible for us to not just beat the cops but live safer lives. There's like, I have a monograph coming out from FEE called 99 Ways to Leave, from the Foundation for Economic Education, for 99 Ways to Leave Leviathan. But in fact, I think there's a lot more than 99 ways.
Yeah.
There's thousands and tens of thousands and even millions of ways, and they all occur in these very small, discrete steps. That's the way the Leviathan was built over the course of, I would say, 100 years, is through these little discrete steps. And the way to get around it and beat it back is through it's very similar sort of discrete steps.
Yeah.
Just one step at a time in your own life, to be aware that there's a very subtle central plan that's sort of goading you to act this way and not act that way. And to become conscious of the plan that's around you, and try to be creative, and crowdsource your knowledge. And that's one of the reasons I founded Liberty.me, was to provide a sort of a platform for crowdsourcing ideas on living a freer life. And we all do have to come together and share tips. Maybe that involves immigrating. Maybe that involves complex tax strategies to, leave the U.S. citizenship, or maybe it involves getting involved in the Free State Project in New Hampshire, or maybe it's just something as simple as hacking your shower head right there at home. Once you become aware that that you're being ruled by people who are no better than you and actually have the desire to harm you, it changes your life. You begin to sort of long for freedom, and then you have to make it real. Not just through wishing and hoping and lobbying and watching presidential debates and cheering, but taking real steps, in your own life to make yourself freer. I think this is the way we're going to beat back the enemy.
So what would you say, like, for, let's say, a newbie, somebody listening that is kind of new to this idea of anarchy and living free? What would you say are the three, and I'm just throwing 3 out as a arbitrary number, the 3 easiest ways to kind of get around that mountain? 3 easy ways to live free.
Yeah, okay, so let me just pick 3 broad areas. One would be education. We have so many alternatives now to government schooling. I mean, if you have children, you should really do your best to avoid government schools. And homeschooling is a great option. Unschooling, just keeping them out of the public schools, at least in their early years, is so crucial. And don't bite this. Don't go for this idea that somehow everybody has to go for college. I mean, college education is one of the great robberies of our time. It's an incredible scandal that people prolong their adulthood by going to college and spending $100,000-$200,000 for absolutely no reason. If they got out into the commercial marketplace, much earlier in life, they would already be way ahead of where they'll end up after college. And I think people are increasingly discovering this. There's so many educational alternatives to that which the government created. So that's one major area. Another area is in personal finance. You have to remember that the reason interest rates are set to 0 nowadays, and the reason credit is flowing so freely and the Fed prints up so much money, is that essentially the ruling class and its state interests desperately want you to be in debt. They want all your present income going to serving debt payments, but you'll never get ahead under these conditions, like ever. It's way in your interest to reduce your consumption level, to live much more simply, and stay out of debt. And that's going to keep you ahead of the curve. To buy into the sort of the debt-based money system and have all your present income going towards paying interests to the financial crowd and the state is a gigantic error.
So would Bitcoin kind of fall under this?
Yeah, that's a great way to become your own banker. And it's not just Bitcoin, but I'm really just nuts for all the altcoins, whether it's Darkcoin or Dogecoin or Litecoin or anything. I think these are amazing, wonderful alternatives to government currency.
Yeah, I'm actually using Bitcoin as kind of a blanket term. That's not really what I mean. That seems to be the most popular.
Yeah, no, I understand. And it may end up being, the dominant cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
In the long run, I think there's every reason to believe it will be. But the good thing is that there's currency competition.
Yeah.
So you've got things like Darkcoin, and we talk about this stuff as if it's normal. I mean, if 5 years ago we talked about the fact that cryptocurrencies are now, there's something like 5 cryptocurrencies or 6 cryptocurrencies that have broken that barrier of reaching dollar parity in terms of their exchange rates and gone beyond it, and that are heavily capitalized, and some are more. I mean, there's something like 150 currencies in the world actually, and Bitcoin, ranks in the top like 5 or 6 in terms of usefulness and liquidity overall. That's an extraordinary record in such a short, tiny amount of time. I would encourage people to kind of look into these cryptocurrencies, not so much as an investment scheme, but as a way of participating in an emergent world of private enterprise currency. The third thing, if I can mention this, is we're dealing now, as we saw in California, but it's true all over the country. We're dealing with, really a catastrophic situation with government basically trying to destroy indoor plumbing. I mean, it seems incredible. This is one of the great achievements of capitalism in the 20th century, was to bring indoor plumbing to everybody, and hot showers and good sanitation. And ever since, really it began something like, I have to think about what the dates were, but I think it was like 1995. There was like a Clean Water Act or something like that regulated our toilets so that they don't flush well, started putting plugs in our shower heads so they don't work well, regulating water heaters, destroying our dishwashing machines, wrecking our clothes washing machines. And at the same time, and ironically, ruining detergents, which had been pretty much perfected as cleaning agents by the 16th century. All these terrible things happened at once, and the result has just been just an unbelievable catastrophe for sort of household cleanliness in general. There are many ways you can't get around them perfectly, but there are many hacks you can undertake. You can turn up your water pressure in your house. Usually most people who own homes, can find ways to do that. Hacking your shower heads, being careful to when you buy dishwashers, you can buy older model dishwashers and clothes washing machines, and always use the hottest settings, especially if you've already hacked your hot water heaters. And take the plugs out of your faucets to make them run better. There's many ways in which you can actually you can't go all the way, but you can do your best and make your house just run a lot better and a lot cleaner just through these little acts of sort of micro rebellion, I guess you would say. I'm a big fan of these sorts of things because they reveal to people the government does not have your best interest at heart.
No, they don't. Much to everyone, much to a lot of other people's.
No, I mean, Obamacare is a great example of this. I mean, a lot of people on the left were really looking forward to this, and thinking that it was going to bring health care to the masses. I mean, it's just so stupid because the exact opposite resulted. The only people who benefited from Obamacare are the large-scale insurance companies and the medical establishment and the government. But regular people end up paying a lot more for their health care than they otherwise would have. But the great thing as a result of Obamacare is it's given rise to all these private alternatives.
Yeah.
I mean, concierge health care is now super active. And there are lots of sort of church-based medical insurers that will insure you at a fraction of the cost of Blue Cross. And many doctors are now just refusing to accept Medicaid and Medicare and even health insurance, because they want to get away from this stupid system the government's created.
There are a lot of hospitals doing that now. But so it's almost like by trying to exert more control, the government has done the exact opposite and is losing control.
No, I think this is I think what we're seeing happen here in this country is very much like what happened in Russia in the 1980s. The controls just pushed too far, and people don't understand this. But the reason Gorbachev ended up inadvertently unraveling the Soviet Union was because he started pressing the prohibition of vodka so far that he was arresting masses of people, thousands, tens of thousands of people for trafficking in underground vodka. And really, and the prohibition just got so extreme that that's what finally sort of tipped it. The public anger was just too much, and the state just had finally just discredited itself completely, and the thing just unraveled virtually overnight. I think we're seeing a similar process starting to take place in this country. I don't think it's going to happen the same way. My guess is that democratically elected government's going to take a lot longer to get rid of than something like an outright tyranny like the Soviet Union. But I do believe that we can create a sort of separate layers of freedom that sit on top of the prevailing status quo. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. We shouldn't forget that the largest single economy in the world today doesn't belong to any nation. It's the black market.
Well, that's not surprising.
Yeah. And it's so, and all, not just, and I don't mean by that just drugs. I mean, pirated products, gray markets, workers that are not compliant with the existing government regulations. I mean, the people are not inclined over the long term to go along with what government wants, and people are just not constructed that way. We're not constructed to be slaves and compliant. We tend to just do what's in our interest, and our interests directly collide with the interests of the state, across the board, whether it's with taxes or regulations or foreign policy or welfare policies or health insurance, education, you name it, across the board. Our personal and private interests directly contradict everything that the state wants us to do, and the sooner we realize that, the sooner we're going to be on the path towards revolution.
I totally agree. Well, Jeff, we are coming close to the end. I wanted to take the last few minutes to talk about your writings, books like A Beautiful Anarchy, and the one that I am currently reading, Living in a Jetsons World.
Oh, wonderful. I love that book. That middle section is one of my favorite things I've ever written. It's sort of least famous in a way. But the whole middle section deals with this topic of intellectual property, and I really went out of my way to help readers think through it by sort of thinking through it myself a little bit at a time, because the middle section I wrote in a period in which I was pretty convinced that intellectual property was not the same thing as real property, and in fact contradicted property rights. but it took me a kind of a while to fully internalize that perspective. And so I was reading a book by Bolden Levine called Against Intellectual Property, and I basically, Against Intellectual Monopoly is the name of the book. Mm-hmm. And I was live blogging while I was reading. So I was recording my reactions chapter by chapter. And what resulted was a kind of a really nice lengthy essay on the topic of intellectual property. I really encourage everybody to go through that and read it in detail, because I think it provides a real serious intellectual challenge. And an exciting one. So I like that book for that reason.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. It's a Jetsons World. Where can people pick that up?
I think you could probably just Google it and then just go Jetsons World EPUB, and it'll probably come up immediately. Also, Liberty.me distributes a canonical version of it.
I was going to say, if you are a member of Liberty.me, you can download it for free.
Yeah. I mean, anybody can join for free for 30 days, and after that, it's like $5 a month or something.
Yeah.
But it's a wonderful community, and you get not just my book, but 200 other book downloads that are just it's great. It's the best literature collection I've ever seen.
I gotta say, for nothing else, I mean, Liberty.me, number one, is a great social media alternative to things like Facebook and Twitter. Although I do spend quite a bit of time on the latter.
I love Twitter. I think Twitter is a lot of fun. It takes a while to learn, but it's very valuable.
But not even so much for the social media aspect of Liberty.me, but for the educational aspect, because there's so much on there to read through, not just the books that you can download, but all of the blog posts and essays that are on there. It's just, I mean, that's how I found that article that I've been referring to, the Making the World a Freer Place. That's where I found that. And there's so much on there by so many different people.
It's wonderful. And, I always tell people if they to join Liberty.me, even if you don't use it every day, but some people do, but even if you only use it every once in a while, it's there for you.
Yeah.
If you ever need it, if you get in trouble with the law, there's if you've got a friendship network that is going to help you. Yeah. And we're all in the situation these days where the state's just round the corner, ready to grab us by the neck and destroy our lives. So Liberty.me is a kind of a internal sort of just community protection society in many ways.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's there for you anytime you need it, and it's a wonderful website. Absolutely,
it is. It's great. I like it. Well, that's it for us. I want to thank you for coming on again, Jeff. It was great having you again.
My pleasure.
Always a pleasure to have you on the show. Where can they find you on Twitter?
On Twitter, I think my handle is Jeffrey A. Tucker on Twitter. Okay. You're more than welcome to go check it out. I think I've close to 15,000 followers, so I'm very pleased by that.
Very nice.
And I would be very happy for anybody to come in and follow me. Yes, Jeffrey A. Tucker.
All right.
I'm at 14.7. Thrilled by that. Really happy, and I'll try to keep you delighted and keep feeding you the good stuff.
Great. Always a pleasure. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. All right.
Well, folks, that is all for the show tonight. Be back here again next week. Same time, Monday, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. Topic to be determined. But stick around on K98 Talk, because Real Serious Nonsense is coming up next. Poll will be, the show will be kind of taken over by Bill and Leslie as Angie takes a break, but I believe Poll will still be with them. But it's a great show, so stick around for it and check it out in the chat room. But that's all for us tonight, and thanks for tuning in tonight. Bye, folks. But that's